All right, welcome back to the archives. I'm gonna try to do a couple more. I might do Anna, Eleanor, and Marie, um, because those are the ones that are fresh, and I actually have those notes here. So I watched this yesterday. Anna Comnena writes a Byzantine history. And so this was around the year 1096. She was born in 1086. Anna Comnena, um, at the time, the army of Christians, they went on their first crusade. Some people say, according to Dr. Joyce, she says there are either 8 or 9 crusades. The crusades were primarily against Muslims. Um, it was the Christian crusaders fighting Muslims to kind of defeat Islam, I guess. And they would fight over the next 200 years. And so in 1292, Muslims took the last Crusader outpost, and the daughter of the Byzantine emperor was Anna Comnena. Byzantine Empire at this time, from my understanding, this is like the Greeks, um, more to the west in the Mediterranean. She was a historian. She loved history. She loved studying history. Her father was Alexius the First Comnenus, and her mother was Empress Irene. She apparently was born and bred in purple, meaning she was really, really wealthy, right? The purple robes was a sign of royalty, of majestic power and wealth. And so she was born to a really wealthy family. She was very well educated. She was really good at science and history. Um, Her father placed her in charge of a hospital, and she was able to teach medicine there, which is also really interesting when men in these days would be like, a woman's role is in the kitchen. And it's like you read about these medieval women. And again, these are mostly emperors and daughters, right? So they come from aristocratic, noble families. But it's just interesting over and over. What I kept on hearing was um, she was her father's favorite. That's a theme I've heard with like Anna, um, Louise, I think, is just like they were just the men in their lives really respected their knowledge, and they fed them so much knowledge, and they wanted them to be in positions of power, and so on and so forth, which you don't hear about, right? Men, like, patriarchy will make you believe that women have never done anything. Um, we are just to be seen and not heard, and our places in the kitchen. Whereas if you look at even some of these, again, in Europe, right, these women were really revered. Their fathers really enjoyed teaching them, right? Um, so she was one of them. She was really well to do. Obviously, they had money. Um, and but she still wasn't happy, right? Some people said she was entitled, and the reason why they said she was entitled is because she kept on she when she was an infant, she was betrothed to Constantine, so who was another emperor. So as an infant, she was betrothed to an emperor, because her father didn't have any sons yet, right? And so the plan was when she was old enough to marry Constantine, her father and Constantine would become co-emperors, thereby making her an empress. Well, that didn't work because 4 years later, her younger brother was born, and apparently she resented him because he took the title from her. Because now, because the son was born, he was the one who would get replaced, right? And so apparently she never forgave her brother. She later remarried Nicephorus Berginius. I can't read my own writing, but she married somebody else because she wanted him to be an emperor. She tried to kill her father at her dad's funeral, apparently. Um, yeah, so she says she should have been born the man and not her husband because her husband wasn't really doing much. She didn't think he was using the power properly, so she basically her husband died. When her husband died, she fortified her stuff and forced into uh so when her husband died, she was forced into a monastery. And so in this monastery is where she started to write her father's history. And it was called Alexiad. It was a book of history about her father's reign. And that is where we get the history of the Crusades. So she's mainly known for her historical works because she was able to document the First Crusade. And in the story, it basically talks about how her father, the emperor, was desperate because the Muslims had taken over Jerusalem at the time. The Holy Lands were in Muslim hands. The Seljuk Turks had gained power, and so it was the Turkish uh, folks, a lot of them went west. They went converted into Islam. They went west into Damascus, all the way down. And then the Byzantine Empire, so the Greeks, Anna's folks, went east towards them to try to fight them, right? And so there's a battle of Manzikert, which the Turks won, so the Muslims won, and the Roman Empire was falling. Pope Urban II saw a way to demonstrate the church's power. And so the Council of Clermont was called. The Pope commanded an army. It was one of the first times that a Pope saw that they could actually command an army. And so Pope Urban II basically said, if whoever goes to war, you're going to have a remission of your sins. God will forgive you all of your sins, and you will have salvation if you fight this crusade for us. So it was low-key very manipulative, right? Um, so obviously you're going to get, for the first time, peasants are responding to the call to war, right? So folks who usually wouldn't have gotten the ability to travel were all of a sudden traveling for war, right? They were fighting wars because they were promised salvation and they were promised that their sins would just be erased. And so you had a lot of people taking up the call. This is where you see the Crusaders with the cross on their chest. There's two leaders, Peter the Hermit and Walter the Penniless. Apparently, Anna gave them these names, from my understanding. Um, it's important to note here that a lot of Jewish people got caught in the crossfire because a lot of Jewish people were also killed because they mistook them for pagans and possibly Muslims. And so it is important to note that at this time in Europe, Jewish people were caught in the crossfire. Many were killed. And apparently, Peter said he heard a voice of God saying that they need to capture Jerusalem from the Muslims. And so, yeah, the Pope again was like, okay, bet, whoever fights this, you will also get land. So the Pope pulled up the ante. Not only will your sins be forgiven, not only will you get salvation, but if you fight, you will get land. So it's a no-brainer, right? It's like what we see now with the military. Oh, you don't have a job, you can't find work, join our military, fight our fights for us, right? Very similar. You don't have land, well, if you want land, you got to fight this battle. And so that was a motivation, right? He said he would give them salvation. And so the Franks from France, the Celtics, um, they arrived at Constantine, and the People's Crusade were slaughtered. They got their ass handed to them. They got beat. They were defeated. People were mad at Peter. Peter wasn't accountable. Basically, he was like, "This is not my fault." Everybody was like, "It is your fault because your army was disciplined and they were greedy." Right? So Anna, again, remember Anna is from the Byzantine Empire, right? Those are her people, and she was like, the Franks, like the Crusade was just a disaster. You guys were too greedy. You didn't have any sort of real strategy, and that's why you got defeated. And so the four crusading, there were four. So there was people from France, Germany, Italy, and there's four. I don't remember which one. They left at 1069, 1096, and they reached around April. It was France, Germany, Italy. There's one more. But Hugh basically led France. He was really cocky and arrogant. right? He was like, I am arriving and I am the king of all kings. And his father was like, okay, girl, I'm also an emperor. I'm not impressed. Um, Italy was led by Bohemond of Taranto, and Anna was suspicious of him. It says that the Greeks were a little bit suspicious of the Italians. And so basically places that were involved at this time was Edessa, Antioch, Nicaea, Jerusalem. Um, and so, yeah, there was war. That was the first crusade. The Crusaders eventually won, um, and Godfrey of Bouillon became the king of Jerusalem. And so the Crusaders did win the first one. The Muslims retreated to the south, the Byzantine retreated north, and the Christian Crusaders established states in the Holy Land. But eventually, around 1291, the Muslims would seize it again. And so, yeah, this is why they were saying that some Western Europeans are influenced by Muslims. Like if you look at the Spanish coast and stuff, the Crusader states were surrounded by Muslims. Um, so yeah, the Greeks were still suspicious of the Latins in the West. Belbrock Castle, which is in Palestine, was a Christian establishment. They have another one in Syria. And so it says that the first crusade was good for the Greeks and the Byzantine Empire because they were able to gain some of their lands back. Um, yeah, so, but basically, that's what Anna was remembered for, is she was able to um, document the first crusade. So that's Anna Comnena. So I'll stop and then I might do one more on Eleanor and Marie because they're mother daughter, and they're really it's just these girls, man. Until next time.